Today on Black Health Now, COVID. Is it really over? Are you going to need another booster shot? Are we going back to masks? Also, in women's health, with the Supreme Court is ready to strike down Roe versus Wade, what does that mean for you and your reproductive rights? Will you have control over your own body? Additionally, health fraud is literally killing people. We'll give you some tips and techniques on how to avoid these pitfalls. Plus, we have Zoe giving us health news from a millennial perspective. All that and more, plus how to eat healthy during the Easter holidays, here on Black Health Now with Dean and Doc.
Welcome to the Black Health News with Dean and Doc. With Dr. Michael Lenore and Mr. Ellis Dean, and medical experts from all over the world. And now, Mr. Ellis Dean.
COVID. Is it over? Are we going to have to get another booster shot? I've already had 3. I'm not getting another one. Dr. Mike, help me out. I'm confused. What's next? What we got to do?
Well, Alice, I'm a little embarrassed myself because I'm confused. When I'm confused about things on immunology and antibodies and boosters and shots, I turn to my friend, Dr. Michael Foggs. Dr. Foggs is the chief of allergy at the Rural Health Systems in Chicago and the past president of the American College of Allergy. Dr. Foggs, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Dr. Lenore.
Let me know, why do we need another booster? Let's just get right down to the fact.
Well, the main reason is because the antibody concentration for antibodies that are designed to neutralize the COVID-19 virus decrease over a period of months so that the level of protection conferred is lost. And so if you don't get a booster vaccine after so many months, the protection conferred by the original vaccine starts to disappear and you are in a window of time where you have no protection.
And did you expect that we were going to have more than one booster? And tell us why, if you did.
It didn't surprise me that we would have to have more than one booster because it's not uncommon for new viruses for which a vaccine is developed that a booster is required. But it was not possible to ascertain how soon that booster would be needed because this is a new virus that the world had never seen. And so therefore you simply literally had to wait and see and study the population to find out what the concentration of neutralizing antibodies was in the population at large, X number of months after vaccination. And so that's why the CDC and the FDA would require studies so that at certain intervals, populations that were vaccinated would have to have their antibody concentrations remeasured to see what the concentration was. And that would be what ultimately would dictate how soon the booster would need to be given.
Well, and it's not just a booster issue for waning antibodies. It's these variants, right? I mean, it does appear that almost all vaccinated people have protection against real sickness and deaths from any of these variants. These variants differ in their degree of infectivity, right? I mean, the first one was the regular one. I can't even remember its name. It's lost in the shuffle. And then came Delta, and then came Omicron, and now comes this new little variant of Omicron. Is it the natural waning of the antibody toward this particular virus, or do the variants make the job a lot harder?
Antibodies actually wane after being given to anyone for any infection, which is why the booster concept was initiated. The problem is that if we had one COVID-19 vaccine, which never mutated, then we could say you're going to have to get a booster shot every X number of months or X number of years, because that would be the only virus in the population. But to your point, because of these recurrent viral mutations, the efficacy or effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine can be minimized because the new variants may not be capable of being neutralized by the vaccine as well as the original vaccine.
So do you anticipate we're going to be getting one of these shots every 4 to 6 months?
In the immediate future, I could very well see us getting the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines every 6 to 12 months. In the case of the Johnson and Johnson, perhaps every 4 to 6, 8 months. So the answer to your question is yes.
All right. One of the things I've heard is that the longer a virus mutates, the weaker it becomes. Do you anticipate that's going to happen here?
Well, it already has happened. For instance, we have now the Omicron BA2, which is the latest mutation from Omicron, which is slightly different from the original Omicron. And we already know that while that is more contagious than the original Omicron, it's less infectious.
Thanks, Dr. Mike. I hope that clears up some of the confusion. Coming up, dealing with COVID while traveling, and your right to control your body is at risk. You don't want to miss this.
People are gathering more and more, especially around the holidays. But COVID-19 isn't behind us just yet, so we must continue to do our part to slow the spread. Let's dive into best practices for COVID-safer gatherings. Travel. Avoid travel if you're unvaccinated. If you must travel, here are some best practices. Get tested first. Wear a properly fitted N95 mask. Consider eye protection. Don't eat or drink en route. Get tested before gathering, especially with people who are unvaccinated or vulnerable. Gathering indoors. If you are indoors, here are factors to keep in mind. How well vaccinated are the attendees? How well ventilated is the space? Is testing being implemented? But I'm vaccinated. The COVID vaccine is not a silver bullet. In reality, the COVID vaccine is highly effective in protecting against hospitalization and death, but as with all vaccines, it does not make you invincible and does not eliminate the risk of transmitting COVID-19 to others. Best practice, continue to use caution. Wear a high filtration mask indoors for added protection, especially if you have unvaccinated or vulnerable persons in your household or bubble. Get tested before going back around unvaccinated or vulnerable people unmasked. If you have symptoms, always get tested. Ventilation, are there open doors or windows? Is there central air? How crowded is it? This is even more important if masks are off. For example, if guests are eating and drinking. Best practice, use a CO2 monitor to measure ventilation. If ventilation is poor, you may choose to sit by a cracked window or wear a high filtration mask. Testing. Even with a negative PCR test result, a person could become infected with COVID after the initial test and unknowingly spread the virus. Best practice, take a rapid test for peace of mind up to the minute. In the absence of a rapid test, it's best to err on the side of caution and wear a high filtration mask to protect yourself and others. And don't forget, keep a guest list with contact information in case anyone does develop symptoms.
I think we can all agree abortion is a deeply personal, sensitive, and controversial subject, especially among African Americans. For more than 50 years, American women have had the right to choose. This summer, the Supreme Court is poised to take away that right. Dr. Mike, what would that mean for Black women?
Well, you know what, I have a lot to say about what that would mean for Black women. Because I can go back to an era when abortions were illegal and Black women died and were brutalized because of illegal abortions. But I have the right person to talk about it. Dr. Glenda Newell-Harris. She's a medical officer for Planned Parenthood and an internist practiced in the East Bay, San Francisco. Dr. Harris, these restrictive abortion laws, which we have been talking about, take us back to an era well before Roe versus Wade. Tell us what you feel the implication of these laws will be.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Lenore, for having me on your program again. You know, any threat or any change to Roe versus Wade is an attack on women, and in particularly attack on women of color. Anytime we begin to start tampering with reproductive health rights, we're really getting into very personal areas where women ought to be able to make their own choices about their own bodies. And in particular, as it relates to when they want to have children and how often they want to have children and how they want to space their children. So when these rights are being addressed as they are in a very restrictive manner, it has an incredible impact on all women and in particular women of color. You might ask why. Well, any state that will want to mandate a restriction to abortion anytime after 6 weeks really honestly just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not created to be friendly or simple for us as women. First of all, many women don't even know that they're pregnant until they are 6 weeks pregnant. Many women have irregular menses, and as a result of irregular menses, it makes it sometimes very, very difficult to be able to know when you are pregnant. And then let's take a look at some of the additional challenges that women of color face as it relates to, let's just say, unemployment, where the national average of unemployment is around 5%. For African Americans, it's over 8%. And why would I want to talk about employment? Well, employment often will bring you health insurance. And when you have health insurance, then you actually have an opportunity to have access to health care. So if I have no health insurance, well, first of all, if I have no job, I'm going to have a difficult time being able to go into Walgreens or CVS or any pharmacy and purchase a pregnancy test to even find out that I'm pregnant. So the ability to be able to go and purchase it. Then if you don't have a job, then you likely don't have health insurance. So without health insurance, you're not able to go in to see a provider and get a pregnancy test. So sometimes, people just get busy. They may miss periods because of menstrual irregularities. And by the time they find out, they may be much further along than 6 weeks.
Oh, and what about the desperation of saying, I got to have an abortion, and you're in a state where that's not available? What are some of the bigger problems as a result of that?
Yeah, well, that presents another set of problems. So I'm in state X where I cannot get access to that kind of care. And then I'm forced to be able to travel across the border. Well, that takes money. You have to be able to have money to travel. And then when you move into the other state, you may need to spend the night. So where do you stay? You have to have money for a hotel. And then you have to have money for the procedure. It's just not a situation that is set up to really allow women to take their own responsibility for their own health care, to have the government making decisions about when and how women want to be able to manage their own reproductive health care. It's really interesting, Dr. Lenore. I've not seen any literature to support that the government has helped to make decisions about how erectile dysfunction has been managed in this country. That's a decision that men are able to make.
Wait a minute.
Between themselves and their urologist.
Right.
And you know what? It really needs to be. It's a personal matter. And while it's a personal matter for males, it should be a personal matter for women as well.
Do you think this is going to drive us back to the days when women had illegal abortions with subsequent possibilities of endometritis and consequences of those?
I do believe that these laws, the changes of the laws, are going to drive us back to what we used to hear about called back alley abortions. Mm-hmm. And not only will it lead to infections in the gynecological area, but many people died as a result of these procedures that were done that were not under controlled or sterile circumstances. Desperate people do desperate things. And when you are faced with those types of situations and you've got laws that are preventing you from getting the kind of health care that you need, then you do desperate things. And we find ourselves sometimes women were losing lives and may lose lives behind this.
One final question. What do you think we can do about this now? I mean, obviously these laws are passed. Looking at the makeup of the Supreme Court, doesn't look like many friends there. What do you think people can be doing?
Well, that's a great question, Dr. Lenore. I really do think that women across party lines, and this is an area where I think, we've heard a lot for the last several days about bipartisan. This is an area where I think that we need to really, as women, come together. Women are the ones that make decisions about healthcare, but it's interesting. The laws are decided often in the government where we may not always be in the majority. So I say that women need to come together and organize, because I believe when women organize and they are focused, that we can make things happen. But we're going to have to march. We're going to have to demonstrate. You're going to have to talk to your congressional people. You're going to have to talk to your senators. And then some of the laws around some of these changes with abortion are really even sort of unconscionable. They want to fine the person that drives you to the medical clinic, or the doctor that may be close within the office.
Or if you're raped, your cousin can prevent you from getting an abortion in some of these states.
Absolutely.
I think this is just headed in obviously the wrong direction. And it is up to women to organize to prevent this. Dr. Glenda Newell-Harris, thank you for taking the time.
Dr. Mike, Dr. Harris is very thoughtful about this issue. What will you be telling your patients about this topic?
Well, I'll be telling them that they have to be careful to know the rules in their own states, because each state is somewhat different. And some of the states will allow you to have abortions, but some of the states will allow your cousin to turn you in. So you need to know what those laws are. If you do feel you need to have an abortion, you need to go to a place that is kind of regulated and organized, because abortions can be very dangerous and the outcomes can be very dangerous if you're not in the right place. So if you do have to go somewhere, make sure you go to a facility that is registered and legalized, that you know is safe and effective, rather than trying to go somewhere where your cousin told you to go or your grandma told you she went. You got to go somewhere where people know what they're doing. That means you may have to leave your state and you may have to go far away, but it would be worth the expense and worth the trip to do so.
You know, my biggest fear, I have two fears. One is that, to your point, women start doing self-induced abortions that are unhealthy, or finding these kind of, office parks or wherever they're getting it done that are unsanitary, and they get an infection because their state won't allow it. The second thing is, this could polarize us even more as a nation. People have to move out of anti-abortion states into abortion states just to have their freedom to choose what to do with their own body. And I think that's wrong. I think it's a bit, of government overreach, and it's just, it's too much. It's way too much.
No, I agree, and I hope that people agree with you. I go back when I was an intern before abortions were legal. On my own service, 40 cases of endometritis as a routine on my service, so that side effects from abortions can become very, very common. And I do think that people have to be careful about what they choose to do and where they choose to do it.
Dr. Michael, I'll say that my last statement is this: two things can be true simultaneously. You can be personally against abortion, but politically for a woman's right to choose. And that's where I stand.
And I agree.
Thanks, Dr. Mike. There's a lot there, and probably a lot more we could say, but we have to move on. In a few seconds, our Taking Control segment helps you stay alive by staying sharp. But first, the latest on the COVID vaccine.
You have a choice, vaccine or no vaccine. You say no to the vaccine and leave it to chance. You think, hey, I'm healthy enough to beat COVID, or worst case, I'll just go see a doctor. But then you test positive for COVID-19. You bank on monoclonal antibodies and pills, but it's hard to come by. Now you have to go to the hospital where they're short-staffed, expensive, and the food is bland. That's if you can even taste or smell it. To make matters worse, you're there for weeks, if not months. You end up on a ventilator, your loved ones are worried, and now the last time you might see them is on an iPad being held by a nurse. You make it out only to get stuck with long COVID. Shortness of breath, brain fog, and organ damage are no joke. But worse, you don't make it out. Now they're slow singing and flower bringing in memory of you, all because you don't trust the vaccine made by the same companies that make the treatment. Make it make sense. Why leave it to chance when you have a choice? The COVID vaccine is our best defense against the worst outcomes. It's free, easily accessible, and proven safe and effective. Visit Roots Empowers for more information about COVID vaccination, testing, and more.
According to the Centers for Disease Control, each year more than 300,000 Americans die as a result of some type of health fraud, whether it's people taking fraudulent medications or buying policies that didn't cover their illnesses. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be victims.
You can really eat that? I thought you were diabetic.
Yeah, I just got these pills. They're supposed to work like insulin. Found them on the internet.
Sounds too good to be true.
I can eat whatever I want. Look, it says so right there on the bottle.
That's not good.
Ever get the feeling you've been had? How can you spot health fraud? Look for bold product claims, personal testimonials, and a host of promises. There are many other red flags, and we'll tell you all you need to know. We're the FDA. Don't be a victim of health fraud scams. Be smart, be aware, be careful. For more information on how to spot health fraud scams, visit fda.gov/healthfraud.
Dr. Mike, I know you've had to tell some of your patients about fraudulent health claims. And I know the internet is probably making it worse with all the foolishness that people put out there. So what can we do?
I don't know what we can do, because people turn to the same people they turn to for love advice, banking advice, and then they turn to health advice. Some of these claims are so ridiculous that you would think that people will not believe them, but they do, because they want to. They want to, either they trust the individual or they want the outcome that individual suggests. Some people made up their minds about certain things, and they just kind of go off on the edge on some of these claims. I think what happens too often is that we as doctors expect that patients will trust us simply because we come into the office every now and then. But you have to remember, some of these people consider you a stranger, whereas they consider these people making these crazy claims as friends and associates because they're with them every day. So what we have to do is we have to be out here, programs like this, telling the truth, being a trusted advisor, and being concerned about the fact that they may be enwrapped in some of these claims, and then they're dangerous. One of the things that we are seeing now is some of the claims are being proved to be false, but many people have already gone off on that path and have not gotten vaccinated and are not being taken care of.
One of my favorite sayings is that people seek affirmation over information. And if we would flip that around and seek information over affirmation, I think we'll live a lot healthier and better lives and avoid some of the fraudulent foolishness that's out there on the net.
But I don't want to absolve physicians and practitioners of their responsibility to earn the trust of the patients that they serve. Too often we see them just as clients and not as partners in the healthcare system. So I think the more we're starting to see African-American physicians talking the truth, speaking the truth, the better the situation will become. But at the same time, I can't be on there every day, all day, talking to people, and it puts me against, I always say that we try to get health news out, but I'm always against a little baby that does 100 push-ups. So consequently, trying to earn the trust of people, I think is a full-time job, and we will continue to do that through the African American Wellness Project and through blackdoctor.org.
Thanks, Dr. Mike. Remember, if you miss any part of our discussion or want to share them with a friend, which I highly recommend, you can go to our YouTube channel at blackdoctor.org, as well as the African American Wellness Project YouTube channels. Now, a minute with Zoe. Healthcare from a millennial perspective.
Hey y'all, I got a question. What's one of the leading causes for death amongst Black people ages 18 to 49? According to the CDC, heart disease. We're also twice as likely to die from it than white people. And ages 35 to 64, you're also twice as likely to have high blood pressure than white people. So, if you and your family want to lower risk, here's some options. Eat fresh, healthy foods, and exercise as much as possible. Heart disease tends to occur when there's a buildup of plaque in the arteries or a buildup of fat around the heart. So, eating better and exercise regularly can help get rid of that buildup or prevent the buildup from happening in the first place. Talk to your doctor about it, get some blood work done to find out. That way you can know sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Zoe. The first big holiday of the season is upon us, Easter. For many of us, that means getting together with family, friends, Easter egg hunts, and a big meal. I know about that meal. How can we do that without adding a few pounds? In our Living Well segment, our own nutrition expert, Andrea Bro, head of Healthy Healing Eats, has some tips. Get your pen and a pad because I need these tips.
Spring is here, and along with it, a favorite holiday, Easter. This celebration of renewal evokes feelings of happiness. It can also evoke feelings of concern, especially for those including parents who want to avoid the amount of sugar that has become part of this holiday tradition. So today we're going to talk about creating a sugar-free Easter. Traditional Easter baskets are often filled with chocolate bunnies, marshmallow chicks, jelly beans, and dyed eggs. But did you know the first Easter baskets were designed to carry homegrown foods to the church for a blessing to give thanks for a successful harvest? Candy was eventually introduced at Easter as a reward for children who abstained from eating it for the 40 days of Lent. Eating excessive amounts of sugar during childhood can lead to unhealthy cravings as kids get older and can lead to obesity, high blood pressure, and heart disease as adults. So let's change the narrative around Easter baskets. There are hundreds of ideas online for creating earth-friendly and healthy ones. While eating Easter candy is not healthy, hard-boiled Easter eggs are. But what are you supposed to do with all those eggs once Easter and the Easter egg hunt are over? You can use them for baking after Easter chocolate chip cookies. I know what you're thinking. Hey, I thought we were getting away from sugar. You are right. This recipe uses maple syrup as its sweetener. You can find it online at healthyhealingeats.com under recipes. Follow the recipe carefully to produce healthy cookies you and your family will enjoy. Thanks for stopping by today. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time on Living Well.
Thanks, Andrea. Remember, you can get more tips on healthy eating from her blog at healthyhealingeats.com. Dr. Mike, are you going to be following this blog? Are you going to be getting some tips?
I don't know about that, Alice. You know, we have a tradition in my house that my wife knows that every Easter I expect to get a basket with chocolate candy and them little chocolate bunnies and them little yellow chickens, which I don't really eat, and some hard-boiled eggs. And then she hides the basket, and I go find it and got the jelly beans and everything in there. And over the next 2-3 weeks, you know, I try to parcel it out, but I try to handle that whole basket. And I don't think, even though I know she's right, that I'm going to follow that particular tradition. It's too ingrained in my soul. I look forward to Easter more than any other holiday because of that reason. So I'm not giving that up.
Well, I completely agree. But thanks, Dr. Mike, and thank you for joining us. Join us next week when, among other news, we'll address an issue every woman will face sometime in their lives. And don't forget to get the latest health news from the African American Wellness Project.org as well as blackdoctor.org. And before we go, Dr. Mike, hit him with your catchphrase.
And we always close with the same statement. Health is your biggest asset, so protect it.